Is there anything you want to say?
She's the Florida actress who tried to outrun the media after police arrested her in connection to the death of her newborn baby. But now we're finally hearing her side to the story.
All right, ma'am, so you already know what's going on, right? So I gotta put the handcuffs behind your back.
We'll make this as easy as we can for you, okay?
You've seen the body cam and heard the police claims that this actress allegedly gave birth on the toilet, let the baby die, then went about her day, even performing in a musical, before later returning home and burying the baby in the backyard. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Not only have police laid out a disturbing story accusing a 20-year-old college student and actress of allegedly killing her newborn baby, they also say she had a disturbing internet search history to go with it. And on top of that, they say she had pictures of Casey Anthony saved on her phone.
And why did you let your baby drown? And if you were so afraid to tell your parents that you were having a baby, that you had to let your baby drown, why are you not afraid to go home now? Do you have anything to say about letting your baby drown?
You can see that Mae Demegillo had nothing to say to a reporter with WFTV television as she was brought into the Flagler County Sheriff's Office in Florida. And to this point, we've been left wondering what Mae Demegillo's explanation may be for what happened to her newborn and what her defense may be, as she is now facing a charge of murder in this case. She is currently at the Flagler County Jail, but her attorney is arguing that she should have the opportunity to be released as this case moves forward. Now, before we get into that argument and what Mae's side of the story may be, I want to talk about what we know about at least what police say happened in this case. And it all centers around this 20-year-old college student, Mae Demegillo. She goes to school in the area of Daytona, Florida. She's also an actress and she's performed in several local productions, and that plays into what police are alleging in this story. So let's go back to March 5th. Investigators say that is when the 20-year-old gave birth to a baby girl as she sat on the toilet in her home.
When deputies arrived on scene, they met with Demegillo. She was a little hesitant to speak at first, and then she advised them that she had been pregnant and delivered the baby and led them to a shallow grave in the backyard. During the investigation and detectives conducting interviews, Demegillo told them that she had delivered a baby in the toilet. The child had been crying initially. She then had walked away and returned, and the child had stopped crying and moving. At that point, she hid the infant in a duffel bag in her closet and went about her normal daily routine.
I'm going to warn you, the details of this story, they are really difficult to talk about. They are graphic, but they're important details as we look at the case that prosecutors are making, because they allege that Demegillo told investigators that she watched the child moving inside the toilet with the baby's head partially submerged under the water. Demegillo then allegedly said that she heard the child cry in the toilet. Police say once she believed that the baby was dead, she took the child out of the toilet and then put that baby girl in a duffel bag. The local sheriff was more specific with what Demegillo allegedly said.
What I can confirm for you is that she stayed in the bathroom cleaning up the blood using paper towels and wash towels from the birth of the baby until the baby died. And she did tell us that she was hoping that the baby would hurry up and die.
Now, the next part of the story, it's even harder to believe. Police say after this scene allegedly played out in the bathroom of her home, she puts this baby allegedly in a duffel bag, but she didn't call police. She didn't call EMS. She didn't reportedly even call family members. She didn't call anybody. Demegillo allegedly went on to perform at a theater later that day in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, where she was performing as part of the cast of the musical Anything Goes. She also allegedly went to school that day. She just carried about her life, according to police, after all of this transpired in the early hours of the morning of the 5th. Now, according to police, Demegillo puts the baby's body in a duffel bag and she hid that bag in her closet. Then, after she performed, she returns home. It's late at night. It's around 10 o'clock.
At that point, she determined that she needed to bury the child. This was at approximately 10 p.m. last night. At that point, she then buried the child in a shallow grave in the back. She is currently detained and will be charged with aggravated manslaughter of a child. The investigation is still ongoing with the medical examiner, interviews.
Now, police learned of what allegedly happened because they say that Demegillo sent social media messages to someone about what allegedly happened, and that person then called the authorities to go to Mae Demegillo's home. Now, Demegillo allegedly buried the child in her backyard in what police have described as a shallow grave. Now, this is a view of the home on Google, and you can see the backyard right there. Deputies say that only Mae Demegillo's mom was home at the time all of this happened. So initially, Demegillo was charged with manslaughter in this case. But then earlier this month, authorities, they took this case to the next level, and they have charged Mae Demegillo with first-degree premeditated murder. And a big reason is not only the story that she told authorities about hearing that baby allegedly still being alive after giving birth. Authorities are also pointing to what they found when they searched her phone. The Flagler County Sheriff alleges that Mae Demegillo had pictures of Casey Anthony on her phone. And they also say she had pictures of newborn babies on her device. Now, you'll remember, of course, Casey Anthony, very famous name in the world of true crime, infamous, if you will. She was accused of killing her 2-year-old daughter in 2008, also a case that played out in Central Florida. Casey Anthony was acquitted on all charges. She was found not guilty. Now, court documents say in this case that Mae Demegillo told authorities that she had no idea that she was pregnant, but deputies allege that she also had searched on her phone for newborn premature babies, Palm Coast OBGYN, and foods to decrease fertility. It is unclear when those searches were made.
And then the hospital is going to have bigger pads for you as well, so we don't have to worry about these little ones, okay?
Yeah, we'll switch them out. I'll get you some.
Now, this is body cam video of when Mae Demegillo was first arrested on that manslaughter charge on March 6th. She was able to post bond. Then, 1 month later, Flagler County deputies announced that she had been arrested again because this time she was charged with murder. Here's the body cam video of her arrest when she turned herself in on that upgraded charge. Now, one thing I want you to notice is Mae Demegillo's demeanor through all of this. Police have said that throughout this entire process, they've described her as, quote, oddly calm. Watch this.
All right, ma'am. So you already know what's going on, right? So I got to put the handcuffs behind your back.
We'll make this as easy as we can for you, okay? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Sure.
So obviously your wrists are super small, so obviously just don't try to slip them or anything like that, okay?
So for as calm as Mae Demegillo appears in this body cam video, and we are blurring the faces of the people around her, they appear to be family members, but I can tell you that Mae's demeanor is so different from the concern that you can see on the faces of the family members around her.
And Miss Demegillo, is that the correct pronunciation?
Demegillo.
Demegillo. Hold on. And it usually takes me about 3 times to get it right. So about the 3rd time I see you, I should be getting it.
Now, this is video of Mae's first appearance on that murder charge, and this was just a first appearance.
I did find probable causes to count 1 for murder, count 2 aggravated child abuse, and count 3 is failure to report death of a person with intent to conceal the death or alter the evidence or circumstances surrounding such death. I did review the indictment yesterday, and bond on there is no bond on count 1. On count 2, it's $25,000, and on count 3, it was $5,000.
Demegillo is still being held in the Flagler County Jail, and her attorneys just filed this motion that is giving us some insight into what her defense may look like. Demegillo's attorney is asking that their client's bond be set at what it was when she was just facing that manslaughter charge. It was set at $250,000, and she was able to post that, which led to the video of her running out of the county jail with the reporters chasing after her. Now, in the new motion that her attorneys filed, arguing for that lower bond, one of the reasons is, quote, "It is a preliminary opinion that the defendant, Anne Demegillo, suffers from severe postpartum psychosis and or depression, as well as other mental issues." And we're going to talk in a moment with a trauma expert about what that actually looks like when we're talking about how this plays out in a court or maybe in a trial, and how much weight that argument could have based on everything else we know at this point. Now, Anne Mae's attorney is also arguing that she deserves bond because she has mental health appointments to go to as well. On top of that, Demegillo's attorney also filed this motion, and it is to suppress the confessions that she allegedly made in this case, claiming that those confessions were obtained illegally. It is unclear at this point what was illegal about the way those confessions were obtained. Again, we just broke down so much of what law enforcement say Demegillo allegedly admitted to them. Demegillo is next due in court on April 21st, and that is where the court will look at this argument and determine whether or not she deserves to have that bond. So how strong might Anne Demegillo's argument citing mental health be in this case? Joining me now is licensed clinical social worker and trauma expert Sherry Botwin. Always great to have you here on Law and Crime. I know this story is really, really tough to talk about. Postpartum psychosis, that is what her defense says she may have in this case, and that may be her defense as we see this case move forward. I know there's a lot of attention, not enough, but a lot of attention on postpartum depression. I think people have become more aware of that. What is postpartum psychosis?
Postpartum psychosis is different. That's like a psychiatric emergency. It's the sudden onset, and it'll happen right in that moment. It's really very rare that will happen. So I can understand why the defense may be saying this is what happened, but I don't know if that's what happened. But it's almost like she would just have to have had no other issues going on, and then in that moment she goes into that psychosis, psychiatric emergency. If somebody doesn't intervene, something awful can happen.
And what she's accused of, I mean, it's nothing short of horrific. And we can talk about the way that she's just kind of like the body language side of it, which has just been like oddly calm is the way police talked about it. But how do you prove that someone had postpartum psychosis if it sounds like it's something that is very much in the moment?
It's so in the moment. And I think in this case, like in many others, there needs to be a deep dive into this woman's psychiatric history before the alleged crime takes place. And then they would need to do a very thorough evaluation of what was going on in your mind. What were you thinking as this was all happening? That's how you kind of figure out the diagnosis. You really have to do extensive testing, interviewing. There's so much information that we don't have now. And if they're going to move forward and that's the defense, she's going to have to hire an expert who really understands the difference between postpartum and postpartum psychosis.
And even in this case, I mean, she has admitted to, according to law enforcement, she's admitted to a lot and lays out, pretty disturbing scene that played out in her home in the early hours of the morning of March 5th. But then also you have what police say she did after. She went about her day. She never called police. She, goes to school. I mean, of course, the part of this that she goes to and performs in a musical is something that's hard to comprehend. When you look at a case of postpartum psychosis and the fact that she did continue on with her day, how does that impact the argument that the defense might make that this is certainly a sad case, but something where you can put the blame on mental health as opposed to putting the blame on her as the person who's accused in this case?
So what we have to think about is if this is someone who's going through psychosis, she could go through the incident, the event can happen, and then her brain or whatever's going on in her mind can literally remove her from all the things that had just happened. So in that way, when you talk about that, how she just sort of went on with her day after and sort of did the everyday normal things, part of me thinks it's possible that in those moments, as she was delivering the baby and as she heard and saw the baby in the toilet, that she was psychotic, and then something can snap you out of it. The problem is that we really don't know yet. There's so much we don't know, but I can understand again why the defense would use that as an argument. I don't know if that's the case, but I have worked with a lot of people who in moments will do like sort of like outlandish or crazy kind of things, meaning like impulsive or just not thinking about it, and then they'll come talk to me and they'll say, I don't really have access to that part of me. I don't really remember. It was almost like it was somebody else. So there's a detachment that you're describing that I'm feeling like could be possible in this case.
Because you also have, and this was, a very shocking thing that police revealed through some of the court documents that we have when she was charged with murder. And it was the fact that even though police say she told them she had no idea that she was pregnant, but there were Google searches for an OBGYN. I know there were pictures of Casey Anthony, which is certainly something that grabs headlines, but I think of the OBGYN searches. I believe there was some sort of search about a premature birth or something along those lines, which law enforcement may point to and say, you very much knew you were pregnant. But then at the same time, she
Right.
comes home from
Right.
the musical and then takes and it's tough to talk about, takes the child's body, which is in a duffel bag, then buries it in the backyard. The fact outside, you have those elements as well. Like when someone is looking at whether or not someone may have had postpartum psychosis, how do those elements factor into figuring it out?
I'm thinking right now as we're sitting here, we've got this split screen, right? You're on the right and I'm on the left. When
Yeah.
somebody has psychotic features, that's kind of how your brain can work. You can have a part of your brain that is thinking horrible thoughts, having impulses. Then you can have another side of your brain that can just literally disconnect and detach from an action that happened, a thought that you're having. So as you talk about it in that way, I understand why people would say, how can you not know what you did when you're Googling this stuff, when you're it doesn't feel like she's premeditated, but she could have called the police or she could have called 911 as soon as she realized she was having these awful thoughts, and she didn't do that. So when someone's truly psychotic, they don't have the wherewithal to then say, I need help, something's really wrong. And what's scary about some of these mental health issues is when you're truly psychotic, you really can completely disconnect. And I don't want to say forget, but you can bury or sort of push away those thoughts or feelings, or in this case, actions that you've taken, and just sort of act like everything's normal. So it is a head spinner. It is really confusing, but it's possible that that is some of what was going on with her.
Going back to police saying that she's been oddly calm through all of this, and like you do watch the body cam video that's been released to us, and there's one where she's getting arrested at the Flagler County Sheriff's Office. She's turning herself in. It seems like many members of her family are there, and the look on their face is just of utmost concern because their loved one is being arrested and is going to be charged with first-degree premeditated murder. That's terrifying. She has no emotion whatsoever, it seems like, on her face. In fact, anytime that we've seen her, whether it's in court, whether it's when the media was trying to talk to her outside of the sheriff's office, there's just no emotion whatsoever. And you can see why law enforcement said oddly calm. And of course, they're not trained therapists. I'm not a trained therapist, but just knowing that as someone who has kind of looked at cases like this, what does that tell you?
It's so common. Again, anybody who's been through something traumatic, and while some people would say, how is that traumatic? She's the one that committed the crime allegedly. But we have to remember, again, when people act on such awful thoughts and feelings, then there's a part of them that can go completely into shutdown mode and just dissociated, detached. That doesn't surprise me at all. I've worked with so many people who've been through stuff or have committed crimes and all that, and then after they act almost apathetic, no connection to what happened. It's like the Nick Reiner case. You and I talked about that also. He was in prison those first few days after, sort of in a catatonic state. till somebody wakes up and realizes what's happened, and in this case, until she can fully comprehend, like all of her, if she's more in a sane state, what she's done, to me, she is presenting the way someone would present after they've done something horrible. She hasn't digested it yet. I don't think most of her realizes what happened, the impact, and what the rest of her life is going to be now as a result of it. You can't process all that in a day, a week, a month.
Well, and it's in good context, and I think it's important to point out, like, we also don't know what she was like before she was in the news and before all of this happened. Like, you think of someone in a theater production, you kind of need to be, at an elevated level of energy, but maybe that's just kind of the baseline of, she just doesn't really respond to those things. We don't know about any previous mental health history as well. So those are some of the unanswered questions with her in jail right now. And if someone's to come in, and she'll be in court next week, and they'll be talking about some of this mental health stuff, I'm sure. But when they bring that therapist in, that expert, to look and try to diagnose her with something, like, what is that like? What is the conversation like? What does someone actually go through with one of these mental health assessments?
It's many hours of conversations. It's taking a full inventory of her mental health history. It's also looking at her family, both sides of her family. Does anybody in the family, or did anybody in the family ever have anything like bipolar disorder, hallucinations, delusions? So it's a comprehensive process where they're going to have to ask her tons and tons of questions, and they're going to have to do a really deep dive into her history. I'm hoping also that if there's any medical records, getting all the medical records. Is she in therapy? Has she been in therapy? Where are those notes? Really just taking a look at her whole life from early childhood up until now, and looking at her life in terms of the family members and the genetic component. It's not one of those things that they're going to be able to figure out by the next court hearing. This is going to be hours and hours of interviewing. They probably are going to have a couple of different experts looking at the case, because you have to look at the whole piece with the pregnancy. Then you have to look at her mental health irregardless of the pregnancy, before, during. It's going to be important that she really have a very comprehensive evaluation.
How's it determined who the person is that does the assessment? Because I'm sure, like, just frankly, the defense would like to see a mental health diagnosis, and the prosecution probably would like to, as they're trying to prove a murder case, not have mental health get in the way of them making their argument. Like, who's the middle person that is the one who sits down, that both sides agree on, is the person to do that assessment?
I mean, I would say a psychiatrist who's worked a lot with postpartum, who's worked in cases where there has been reported postpartum psychosis. It's really about having someone who can come in, someone neutral, someone who can look at all aspects of this case without just jumping to any conclusions. Whether, yes, she's definitely having postpartum psychosis. Yes, she committed murder and she doesn't have a mental health issue. You have to find somebody who really can be in the middle, fair and comprehensive and really knowledgeable. Because I think when you're talking with a psychiatrist who's worked with postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis, that person will know after really looking at the case what this is. And that's what the defense and the prosecution, if they're going to give her a fair shot at this, they've got to have somebody come in and really look at all parts of the story.
Is it the judge typically who would pick that person to come in and do that?
Usually in this case, I would think it would be the defense lawyer who would say, I want to work with this person, but then the prosecution probably will have their own expert. I've seen that a lot where both sides hire an expert, and then what happens is both experts are very contradictory in what they think and what they feel. It happens all the time, but she really does need to see, whether it's one expert or two experts, they need to really be impartial, and they need to have a lot of experience working with postpartum.
And when it comes to one other line that was in the motion just for her bond, kind of making the argument, and I think the headline coming out of it was that postpartum psychosis bullet point that the defense wrote down. But they also in their argument said that she has mental health appointments to go to, like physically go to outside. And we see that a lot, is people saying, hey, if you allow our client out, they can go and take care of these things. I guess how strong of an argument is that in cases like this when you're trying to get someone out?
Not really very strong, because since COVID, we as therapists, we can see people anywhere. All you need is an iPad. I think what I'm understanding in this case is that she really does need to have psychiatric and psychological intervention. Just throwing someone in prison or in jail while they're waiting to go through the legal system. Ideally, you can do both. You can be in jail and you can still have any services that you're needing when it comes to mental health. I'm hoping that the jail would allow her to continue seeing a therapist if that's something that she had already been doing, but that's not a reason to let someone out of jail.
Yeah, no, it's a good point there. It's an awful case. I mean, no matter what comes out, to just think of this newborn losing their life, and then, all the details that surround it. We'll see what happens. She is due in court next week. Sherry Botwin, trauma expert. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Once again, Mae Demegillo due back in court April 21st, and we will keep you updated on what happens. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also now streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.